So I'm going to put my neck on the line here and say that we're probably not going to get a sunrise. There's some nice light in the gaps in the clouds over here, but of course that would involve me having to track down, at which point the sun isn't going to be striking the stones in my immediate foreground. It may look nice, but I think being up here, there's more of a potential if any sun does break through. So with the whole lack of sunrise not going to be happening, or at least not in any vigour, is to play about a little bit with some of the natural lines in these stones. It's a bit cruffy. That is a term, by the way. By cruffy I mean, well, there's just bits of cruff, and you just got to be careful because that's not very photogenic, for example. And even the plants have kind of died off just a little bit, but kind of working with what I have here. Let's go for a bit of a dander. So again, is there potential here? If these stones carried on, potentially. But again, this bit here just in the mid-ground, it's a little bit cruffy. Well, it must be now only a few minutes before sunrise. Yeah. So now what we hope for, in situations like this where nothing has happened at sunrise, you kind of go, has the sun actually risen? You wait around. Remember, all it takes is a little gap, just a little gap in those clouds, and we have potential. Life of a landscape photographer. This is pretty much what we do 95% of the time. Love it though. See you in a bit. So yeah, I've come down over the brow of the hill. There's still just a little bit of colour in the sky. So I'm shooting on a 10 to 24mm, pretty much at 10mm. I'm shooting with a 2-stop soft edge grad, and I'm also shooting with a 10-stop NZ. I'll be going for about 4 minutes. Again, just a little tip whenever you're shooting a long exposure during the hour kind of sunrise, sunset. Even though you can do your calculation, remember as the sun is rising, it is getting naturally brighter. So just flick a little bit off that. It was telling me I was needing about a 5.5 minute exposure. So I'm probably going to do about a 4.5 minute exposure and then work from there, because it is obviously getting naturally lighter. Obviously that would be a different plan if it was sunset. If it was telling you to do a 3-minute exposure and the sun was setting, the light was fading, you might want to put in 3 minutes 30, 4 minutes. A little bit of experimentation needed there. So yeah, just trying to catch a little bit of that last morning light in the clouds. Sadly, they're not moving a lot, so the 10-stop probably won't have a huge effect. Of course, you never know until you actually flick the shutter button. So we'll be going for 4 minutes and 10 seconds now. Just going to sort of whack that off and see how that came out. It's nice. The foreground just not lit up. Again, I think this would work pretty well. Sunrise where sun actually rose. There is a little bit of movement in the clouds. What I like about the movement in the clouds, they're kind of moving away from me. Bit of a non-event sunrise was, so apologies for that. So sadly the light just wasn't playing ball, meaning I was unable to make an image that morning. Still, Malin Head is a fantastic place to visit, whether the weather's playing ball or not, so I enjoyed myself. Anyway, after this it was back to the car, get some breakfast, before heading on to my second location, Gleneven Waterfall. Let's see how we get on there. So welcome to Gleneven Waterfall. Beautiful walk up here, as you've seen. And in fact, one of the reasons for coming up here wasn't necessarily the waterfall, which I've shot a couple of times, but it was just to see what the autumn colours are starting to do. And as you can see, if I just turn you around, they are certainly starting to come. I reckon another couple of weeks in this place may be just a riot of autumn colour, which is kind of what I was looking for. But more on that in a bit. One of the reasons why this waterfall is so good to photograph, not just the fact that it's a pretty good waterfall, the actual current, the way the water goes here. If you leave your shutter open for a couple of seconds, you actually get this really nice swirly pattern. What we're really looking for here is a bit more autumnal colour. Some of those leaves falling on some of those rocks. If you're so that way inclined, even picking up some of the leaves and placing them on the foreground rocks. That wouldn't necessarily be my thing, but each to their own. I'm shooting on the XT1 with the 10 to 24mm, nice and wide. I will be using probably at least a polarizer. The polarizer will allow me to kind of cut any sort of glare off the water, but it will also allow me to stop down to get a long enough shutter speed. I'll also, I may add to that a 4-stop ND filter as well. Now, one of the things I've found shooting in this location, depending on the time of day, sometimes the sun will be kind of peeking through this little gap here and causes pretty bad glare at the top of the waterfall. We'll see how we go today. And of course, you've got a couple of options when shooting the waterfall. You can go in close on this side, really exaggerating the swirl. You can go kind of in the middle and put your waterfall bang smack in the middle. Or if you wanted to get your feet wet, of course, you could come on down a little bit, and your foreground interest would be added by the water flowing down through the rock. So we might give a couple of these a go. So now that I've got the kind of main classical shot that you would do here at the waterfall, I've come a little bit further down the stream, and I'm actually making the waterfall less of a main feature. It's more of a kind of a background feature. And instead what I've done is, still on the 10-24, shooting at about 12mm. Now the reason why I'm shooting at 12mm is on the Format High-Tech holder. When you put the polarizer in, you actually will end up getting some vignetting at around 11-12mm. So I just bring that in just ever so slightly until the vignetting goes. And what I'm doing is I've actually pointed my camera slightly downwards. The waterfall is going to be kind of still in the frame. Not all of the waterfall will be in the frame, but I'm mainly highlighting these leaves, these sort of autumn leaves that are sort of being washed over. And of course with the polarizer, what I'll do is I'll take 2 shots. I'll show you one with the polarizer in neutral, and I'll show you one with the polarizer in full effect. And you can see that when doing a shot like this, you really want to be able to see through the stream to pick out those leaves. So this is where a polarizer is absolutely essential. So I'm going to carry on shooting some of that. I just bring you in actually. So you can see here that obviously we're just nicely showing up some of that autumn colour. So that's me done up at the waterfall. As I say, I think this place will really come alive in the next couple of weeks. Colour just really, just beautiful. But that's where the polarizer comes into its own. Shooting in forest, shooting by rivers. A number of other filters you can probably, digitally fake, but the polarizer, an absolute necessity in every landscape photographer's bag. So, full disclosure here, folks, this image was actually taken on a different trip to the waterfall. I just wanted to show you an example of those circular swirls. And here's an image I did take on that particular trip. It's an ICM image, intentional camera movement, not to everyone's taste, but I kind of like it. So welcome down to the Welcome to Doag, welcome to beach, strand. Anyway, light is nothing, but kind of hoping that this is going to kind of break through here behind me. But this is probably my favourite stretch of beach down here. I've been here before. I'll whack up some images from before. It's actually a beach that has potential at various times. With an outgoing tide, or I guess an incoming tide, you end up with obviously lots of potential shapes around rocks and things like that. A day like today where the tide has already kind of gone out most of that way, then you can actually go through what I like to call the dinosaur graveyard. Huge big rocks and boulders and all kinds of stuff going on there for sort of textures and more intimate shots. So lots of potential down here. What I'm doing at the moment is, I'm not sure that you can see that, but I've actually got a super long exposure going. I'm not really holding up out a whole lot of hope for it. Back a number of vlogs ago, I did talk about how long exposure photography allowed me time just to contemplate and consider and think. So that's kind of what I'm doing here. It's a very peaceful beach. It's a lovely place just to kind of get, lost with your thoughts. There's potential here. I mean, there's some nice kind of moody colours going on. I'm starting to like maybe some of this texture here. This, and then of course you got the breakers and the clouds in the distance. Now I'm currently on the 10-24. That would be too wide for this shot. Probably need something like maybe a 30mm or something on this. So once that 10-minute exposure has finished, I'm probably going to switch lenses. Note I said switch lenses. My XE2 again has decided to play silly buggers, so I think that's going to have to Visit the doctors, more expense. But it's a beautiful, beautiful stretch of coast, and I just love coming here. Let's see whether this super long exposure has done anything. So we're in 7 minutes 32. I won't go too close. There's a little bit of light falling kind of on the water. There's a little bit of light falling on those textured rocks, and maybe a slight bit of movement in the clouds. 7 minutes 54 on the clock. Told me 10 minutes. So there or thereabouts. We'll see how we go. Bit of a theme developing here. Sadly, that long exposure shot just didn't really cut the mustard. Anyway, the beach itself down at Doag is absolutely beautiful. As you can see here, textures, patterns on both the rocks and the sand. And in fact, what I love to do is take some of the more intimate landscape shots, just focusing on those rocks themselves. This is one with the iPhone. Right, on to our last stop of the day. Let's see how we get on here. So I love finding little pockets of beauty, and that's exactly what I find here. It almost reminds me of a high fell tarn. Sunset is kind of fizzling again, but there's just that, hopefully you can make it out, just that subtle light. So I've stuck on a 10 stop ND filter, and I'm kind of half and half, kind of the reflection of the rocks and then the rocks themselves, just giving a rather nice effect. Yeah, so just little pockets like this that when sunrise is giving you lemons, do something with the lemons, I guess. Probably going to point myself this way, potentially. I love the kind of jagged nature and the leaning of all the rocks. And I say there is just a little bit of subdued light being cast on them. So this will be my last location. Hope you've enjoyed our little bimble again round County Donegal. These would have been some of the locations that we would have gone on the workshop if there had been one. But I hope you've enjoyed coming along for the ride. I'll obviously throw up a couple of images. Still unsure whether this will be split up into 1 or 2 blog posts. Probably 2 given the amount of content. As always, if you like what you see, hit the subscribe button. Hit the thumbs up button, and of course if you have any comments on anything that you've seen, or indeed one of my workshops, let me know. For now though, I shall say goodnight. See you later. Bye. Is that a term?